Salut! Do you remember we learned that salut is another way of saying hello or hi from our last episode? So sometimes instead of always saying bonjour when you meet your friends, you can also say salut. Alright, we're going to continue with our lesson on introductions. Last episode we talked about how to mention your name, ask the other person for their name, and how to say pleased to meet you. So we had je m'appelle et vous, enchanté as the basic vocabulary or expressions for last week. We're going to continue this week with how to give a bit more information and also how to use titles. So we have Monsieur, Madame, Mademoiselle. I know that some people say Mademoiselle, but we're going to try and get the right pronunciations today. So, Monsieur. Monsieur is typically used for males as a title, which would be equivalent to Mr. in English, for whether you're male or female. Monsieur also is equivalent to Sir, that is used in English. Alright, so Monsieur is used for males, whether you want to say Mr., whether married or unmarried. For males is Mr. Now, Madame is used for women, typically married women, but also for matured women. I'm sure most of you call your French teachers Madame, because Madame is also kind of honorific title. Okay, Madame actually is two words. Madame, my woman, in a certain sense, Madame, and then Monsieur is like my sir. Some of you have been saying Monsieur, Monsieur. I've been hearing so many things, but it's Monsieur. You remember how I taught you to pronounce the E? Monsieur. All right, I know it doesn't sound like it looks, but trust me on this. Just say Monsieur and you'll be good to go. Then we have Madame. Madame is, as I said, used for women, typically married women, but basically for mature women. So when you see a woman, you say Madame and then you add their title. So we have, for example, Madame Asante, Madame Korte, Monsieur Kwashi, Monsieur Oguma, pourquoi pas? And then we have Mademoiselle. Now, Mademoiselle is made up of two words, ma and demoiselle. It's actually like old romantic English. So it's like the typical Shakespeare milady, if you've heard that before. Okay, so for young, single, beautiful ladies, and every lady is beautiful, so that's fine. So we have Mademoiselle. Alright, however, with the rise of the feminist movement, people don't understand why, whether you're a married man or not, you can be called Monsieur, but there has to be a distinction between male and female, between married women and unmarried women. And so because of that, at least in France, there's a law since about 2012 that all women can be called Madame, whether you're married or unmarried. So when you are not sure whether a young unmarried lady will be offended if you call her Mademoiselle, to be on the safe side, just call them all Madame. I personally don't mind when my students call me Mademoiselle, because then I feel flattered that they think I'm quite young and cute. And so just know that Monsieur, Madame, Mademoiselle are all titles that can be used to address specific people. Now, beyond that, sometimes people's titles go beyond simple Mr. or Mrs. or Miss. And so you may have, for example, Doctor. You may have Pasteur. You may have Maître. You may have Professeur, etc. So Doctor is the title Doctor. So assuming that I am Dr. Chachu, you want to call me, you can say Dr. Chachu. And assuming I was a pastor, you could also say Pasteur Chachu. Pourquoi pas? And then met is actually in English is master. You remember what we learned about the accent circumflex? So this could have been an S missing from like master, so met. Okay, and met is used for lawyers. So a French lawyer usually, instead of saying lawyer so and so, they would use met. And then professeur for a professor. All right, so we can try and use it. The people that you normally call by these particular names, Mr. this, Mrs. this, Miss this, Doctor this, Pastor this, lawyer this, professor this, just try and replace them with the titles in French. So we can say Monsieur Corte, we can say Madame Chachu, we can say Mademoiselle Asante, we can say Dr. Kwashi. I'm prophesying into a young Mr. Kwashi's life. We can say Pastor Oduro or Pastor Otaville. You could say also, for example, Maître Engman, or you could also say Professor Asa, for example. All right, so these are titles that you can use when addressing people in a conversation. Now, last week we learned how to say your name, ask the other person for theirs, and to say pleased to meet you. Beyond that, when you meet somebody, what are some of the other conversations that you have? You may ask them what they do, or you may tell them about your profession, or they may also tell you about their profession. You may ask them where they live and ask other information like that, and so, or where they go to school, for example. And so let's see if we can have a few situations like that. Yes, so beyond saying your name and asking them and saying pleased to meet you, what are the kind of other conversations you have when you're introducing yourself to somebody? You can also ask them how they are doing, and so you can ask comment allez-vous, or comment ça va. And I'm sure you've simply just heard some people saying ça va, or you could also say vous allez bien. And all these are different ways of asking how are you. Some are a bit more formal than others. So comment allez-vous and vous allez bien are more formal and more likely to be used in professional settings, and meaning how are you doing. Then we have comment ça va and ça va, which are also how are you, but used more in informal settings. All right, so try it out on your colleague. Ask your colleague comment allez-vous, ask your friend comment ça va, or just simply ça va. Or you could also say vous allez bien, are you doing okay, are you fine. All right, and what are some of the responses that are given to these? You can have je vais bien, which means I'm fine, or you can simply have ça va bien. That's not good. I shouldn't use my hand. Ça va bien. All right. Or vous allez actually could also be used for a group of people, and so instead of saying je vais bien, you can also have the response of nous allons bien. All right, so we have je vais bien, ça va bien, or nous allons bien. All right, I'm sure you've also heard the typical school response, ça va bien, merci, et vous? Well, that is technically right, but it's not very natural to hear that when you go out and are speaking with people in real life, usually the people will just respond, I'm fine. In the same way as in English, apart from the classroom setting where the children say, we are fine, thank you, and you, most people will just be like, fine, thank you, and probably would not ask, and you, in the chorus kind of setting, even though they may return the question to you by also asking, how are you doing? All right, so these are questions that you can ask. How are you doing? Comment allez-vous? Comment ça va? Ça va? Vous allez bien? And then the response can be je vais bien, ça va bien, nous allons bien, etc. All right, so try that out and let's see. Another question you could ask somebody when you meet them for the first time and you're trying to get to know them is to ask them what they do, what is their profession, or where they work, where they go to school, etc. Alors, imagine that you're in JHS or an SHS and you've met a colleague and you want to ask them which school they attend. So you can either say, vous fréquentez quelle école. Vous fréquentez quelle école? Vous fréquentez quelle école? Which school do you attend? And the person can respond, je fréquente Achimota School. Ou bien je fréquente Presec Legon. Ou bien je fréquente University Basic School. Alors, vous fréquentez quelle école? Which school do you attend? Vous fréquentez quelle école? Which school do you attend? Je fréquente, and then you add Achimota School. Je fréquente Presec Legon. Je fréquente University Basic School. Ok? Et puis, on peut avoir le retour de la question. We can have the same question thrown back to you. Et vous? Okay, so whenever you see et vous just means what about you. So what about you? You respond to whatever question you asked yourself. Vous fréquentez quelle école? The person responds and then continues by saying et vous. Et vous means and you. Which school do you go to? So you can now say je fréquente and then you add whichever school that you go to, assuming that you're not a student but you are a worker. And then you probably would ask, vous travaillez où? Where do you work? Or où travaillez-vous? Où travaillez-vous? Or vous travaillez où? You remember what we learned about the accent. So the accent is on this to show us that this is where. Where do you work? Now, I have to let you draw your attention to this. Okay? Travailler in French means to work. It doesn't mean to travel. Because a lot of students mix up travailler and voyager. And then they say il a travaillé, trying to mean he has traveled. But où travaillez-vous means where do you work? And then you can respond je travaille à Ecobank. Je travaille à University Basic School. Je travaille à la boulangerie d'Accra. Je travaille à la boulangerie d'Accra. Boulangerie is bakery. So maybe the person works in a bakery called Accra Bakery. So je travaille à la boulangerie d'Accra. And so when the person asks the question, you provide the response. So these are the responses that you give to the question. Où travaillez-vous? Alright, so travail, there's no accent on the E, I've taken it off. Je travaille à Ecobank, je travaille à University Basic School, je travaille à la boulangerie d'Accra. Why don't you try this with your colleagues? Ask them where they work or what they do and let them give you responses. Until I come here with another episode, au revoir et à bientôt.